In this video, still under the heading of Adobe Camera Raw, we're going to go through a full creative image manipulation, start to finish. I have demonstrated the image I'm about to use in this video once before, so I do hope it's not one that you've already seen. But even if you have, it may be worth a second look. Now, the reason I've recorded it once again here is because I think it's a great ending to this set of videos. This video also demonstrates a number of things that we should keep in mind. Firstly, exposure remains the holy grail of image editing and photography. Secondly, I think this video is going to demonstrate the power of Camera Raw. Thirdly, I think this video will be a reminder that we must look past the thumbnail we see to recognize we have something worthwhile despite its first appearance. Fourth, that the editing is not such a difficult job if we just take things slowly and steadily and take one small step at a time. Remember, global editing first, strategic editing, and then finishing touches. The fifth is that we try and have our sat-nav route mapped out in our head when we start working on any image. We need to have some idea where we're heading, and that means adding contrast and clarity with the image we've got here. But also, once we start work and the creative juices start to flow, then we get other ideas. What I'm referring to is the fact that this image is going to end up in colour. But colour wasn't on my mind at all when I first started work. By the way, the subject is a stainless steel bench on the seafront at Mooloolaba, which is on the Sunshine Coast of Australia, but not so sunny on that particular day. A dull, wet and as overcast as you're likely to get. So perhaps this video could add a final thought. There are always images worth capturing no matter what the conditions. Let's make a start with this image with stage 1 of our global editing, which is up to our lens corrections, and we're going to tick the box to remove any chromatic aberration. I don't think there's a great deal, but whatever there is we'll remove. There is a bit of a distraction down at the bottom left corner, but when I tick the enable profile corrections, that fixes that pretty well for us straight away. So let's go back to the basic tab and take a look at that histogram. Now we can see it stacked a little bit to the left, so if we go up to the exposure, which is the center section, and we move it a little bit to the right, we can see it brightening up quite a bit. We've got a bit of a deficiency here in the highlights and also the whites, so let me just tweak those up a little bit, and also the whites. I'm going to drop down the blacks just to give a bit more impact, but what I'm also going to do is lean quite heavily on the clarity, and I may even do some of the dehaze as well. I'm going to go down to something like that because I want bags of impact into this picture. There are times when we're working with a raw file, particularly one like this. This is a good example, I think, where we can be quite aggressive with those sliders. Now, I know I said this image is going to end up in colour, and it will, but at this point when I went through the original manipulation, I couldn't see any point in keeping any of the saturation. You can see it's virtually black and white, even though there is colour there. I could push the colour up and you can see a little bit come in, but not a great deal. So what I'm going to do next is just take the vibrance and the saturation off. I've got an area down at the middle bottom which is a little dark, and I'd like to lighten that a little bit. But then the area top left towards the centre, the first 4 bars there, I think they need darkening. We've got quite a wicked scratch down one of the panels, but I think I'll deal with that when I open this up into Photoshop a little while later. So graduated filter time for the top left, I think. Let's pick one up from the top, and I'll drag in the filter from that sort of position. I just want it to come just to about there. You can see that's a little too much, so I'll right click and reset. I'll hit the V key to just hide that overlay for a moment. Drop the exposure down at the top left. Maybe tweak the clarity a little bit more. Maybe even a little more dehaze. Maybe I'll just raise that a little bit now. That's looking okay. I don't mind it going slightly darker here, but I'd like to lighten the area middle bottom, and I think to do that I'll use an adjustment brush. So straight up to the brush, let's select it. You can see I've got quite a large brush there. I'll just click and drag to start the process and create the pin. But I'm going to right click the pin and reset and come over to the sliders because I need to decide what to do. Well, we've got shadow detail there, so maybe I'll lift the shadows. Maybe I'll lift the exposure a little bit. And now let's do a little bit of work here and see what effect we're having. I've got my flow rate set very low down here, so maybe I could creep that up a little bit more to 5. I'll adjust the brush, and you can see I can just take the pressure off of that shadow a little bit. Don't need a great deal, just a little bit, and I think that's going to do okay. And down at the bottom right corner, given that's the lightest corner of the rest of them, what I may do is just pick up another graduated filter and just drag that in. I'll hit the V key so we can see the overlay. All I need here is just a little darkening, and you can see I really am leaning on these sliders quite a bit. Now I'm going to hit the H key, which is the equivalent of going up to the top left and touching the hand key, the hand tool I should say, and that will bring us back to our basic tab and all of the rest on the right hand side, because what I'd like is just a couple of minutes to just sit and look at the image. Is it okay? Am I ready to open it up into Photoshop? Is there one or two other little tweaks that I want to do? I think I'll just go to my exposure, drop it just a little bit more impact in there. I think I'm going to live with that. Now in normal circumstances, if you've been watching many of the other videos, you'll know that I probably would go up to my radial filter, double click and darken the edges. But to be honest, I'll hit the V key and I'll reset, but I'm not sure it needs it. I think it's got a nice natural darkening around the edges and the corners anyway, but I'll just take a look. You see what I mean? I suppose I could take a little bit of it, keep our focus nicely in the middle there. Now I think the next job is to open this image up into Photoshop. Now once the image has opened, I am reminded that we're working here on a smart object. Remember, the smart object status can be turned on in Adobe Camera Raw, and it will remain on until we decide to turn it off. Now I generally work in this way all the time, so it's not surprising that the image opens up as a smart object, but on this particular occasion I don't think I need that, so I'm going to go to the right of the thumbnail, right click and choose Rasterize Layer. It just takes the layer back to just the standard Photoshop layer. I'm going to have a go at that scratch down the right hand panel there. To do that I'm going to use my healing brush, but I'm going to do all of the work on a new blank layer. So down to the bottom right of the layers, click to create the new blank layer. We can zoom in. May need to get it a bit bigger than that, and we can go over to the left hand side and select our spot healing brush. Now when you've got a long scratch like this, it's obviously going to take a little while, so I don't need you to watch me do every single part. A lot of the time we only have to cover it up in certain places. We just make sure it doesn't attract our attention. But it isn't that difficult to do. There's a little blob there, we'll just touch and get rid of that. But you can see I can just click a couple of times here. I'll keep my brush as small as I dare in places. And you can see if I go down here, when I've got long areas like that, I can click there, hold the shift key and click there, and you'll notice it'll repair in a straight line, so I can speed up the process at times. There's another one there. So what I'm going to do is just spend a few minutes going down some of these and just wiping away as many as I can so that it doesn't become a problem in our finished image. Now maybe I'll go down and record down to the other side of that large area of water, so stay with me just for a little bit longer, and we'll just click a few times here. I always say this when I'm recording a video like this, that I'm working quick and dirty. What I mean by that is I'm always conscious that a video of this nature can easily stretch into 30 minutes, and it becomes quite large now that we can create HD videos. Now I've got quite a few scratches on there, but most of them are not going to be seen. This is the important one, so let me hold the shift key and see if I can fix that in one go. Needed 2 touches there, across there. You can see it's just patient work. It's certainly not difficult work. So leave it with me. I'll be back in what seems no time for you, but the scratch will be repaired. Now I've completed the spotting that I want to do here. What I perhaps should have said right at the start is when you select that healing brush from the toolbox on the left, go up to the center top of the screen to the options. Just make sure you've got the sample all layers box ticked. That's the little box that allows us to fix the problems on the stainless steel, but do all of the painting on the new blank layer. So if I just turn my stainless steel image off for a moment, you can see I've done quite a bit of work, and as I said before, doesn't look very elegant when we see it like that, but when we see it together it is. And if I then turn off the work I've done, you can see it certainly was worth doing. Now how much of this you do is going to be a personal choice, but I would say that whether we do this consciously or unconsciously, most of us carry out what we would call a cost benefit analysis. If we feel we've got a good image coming up here, then it's worth spending more time, isn't it? Now once I'm happy with the repairs to the scratch and any of the marks on the image, I'm going to go to the top right of the layers, click the little icon way up there and select Flatten. Because what I'd like to do now is to take a look at the Nik filters I introduced in a previous video, because I think they're going to work quite well with the content we have here. So let me go to the top left of the screen, select my filters and my Nik collection, and the ones I want are Silver Effects Pro 2. Remember, down the left hand side we have a number of presets, and on the right hand side is where we can adjust those presets. So for example, if I like the look of something like that and I thought, well, I like it but it's a bit on the dark side, I could go over to the right hand side and I can adjust the brightness and a lot of other options to get something closer to what I want. But I'm going to go down to 2 of my favorite options, this one and this one. Now out of the 2, I think I favor this one, which is High Structure Smooth. So I'm going to go down to the bottom right of the screen here, and I'm going to accept that and open that up into Photoshop. Now once the image opens up, you can see that the Nik filters do a grand job, but not only that, they leave our original alone and create a new copy and apply the filter to that. So I can turn this one off and see a before and after. And although I squeezed as much contrast into the image as I felt I could, I think that's a definite improvement. Now you've got 2 choices. I've saved this as a layered file, and because I'm happy with this, I'm going to flatten this together once again, just to keep the layers palette on the right hand side clear, because we're going to add some colour. Now in my intro I was expecting to get to an image like this, and that was going to be it, but while I was working I thought about adding colour. First of all, I thought about adding strategic colour in just some of the water droplets because they're in nice shapes all across the stainless steel, but then I felt I would colour the entire bars, and that's very quick and easy to do. I'm just going to demonstrate one, because once you've done one, then you can do exactly the same for all of the others. There's a number of ways we can do this, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go to my toolbox on the left hand side. I'm going to select my polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to drop the size of the image down just a little bit so I can get right off the edge at the top and bottom. Control, Alt and Spacebar, click once or twice. There we have it. So I'm going to choose the bar that's third in from the right hand side. So here I'm going to start and make a selection right the way up that shadow area and across and all the way down, and I'm going to copy what's within that selection to a new layer. Now I don't have to worry too much about the shadow areas. In normal circumstances I'd probably go and use my select and mask and feather the edge, but to be honest I'm not even sure we need that because we've got pretty solid black here. So all I'm going to do here is copy that selection to a new layer. Control J will do that. You can go to Edit Copy and Edit Paste from the top left of the screen, but that's a lot less convenient than Control J. And there you can see what's happened in the layers on the right hand side. So now I can target just that layer and apply whatever colour I want, and I chose red because it's in a prominent position and red is a prominent colour. To add that colour I'm going to use my hue and saturation palette. Now we can bring that up with keystrokes, but the first time I bring it up I'm going to go way up to the top left, Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, Control U is the shortcut, and when it appears we can tick the colorize box here, push the saturation up, scroll the hue to get the colour we're looking for, then you can do final adjustments on the saturation, but I want something fairly strong like that. There we have it, pretty quick and easy. Now all we've got to do is repeat that for any of the bars that we want to colour. So I do need to remember though to go back to the background, because each time we're going to be copying one of these bars to a new layer. So we are going to have quite a layered stack here, but it's quite simple. Let's take the one next door. I've still got my polygonal lasso tool selected, so let me select the one now to the right. Once again, Control J, Control U to bring up the hue and saturation, tick the box to colorize it. Let me move down to yellow. I'll push the saturation up. Yellow is another dominant colour, so it's not a bad colour to have there, I think. OK, and all we'd need to do is to repeat that. Now if we remember that warm colours bring our interest forward and cool colours push them away, then perhaps we could save the outer bars here for the shades of green and blue. But all we need to do to create those is to reselect the background, make the selection, do exactly what I've done. And the good thing about having these in layers is once we get all of the bars done, we've still got the opportunity to adjust the colour. Well, with the spinning round of the screen you can see that I've coloured all of the bars. You'll also notice that one of them contains the top left bar and the bottom right. So I did both of those together. I selected both of them. But for every other bar I kept them separate. So we can turn them on and off. I've saved this as a layered file, and of course it would be a good idea, wouldn't it, to live with this at least overnight. And once we're happy with the colours, then of course we can, to finally finish, flatten the image. So now we can take a look at the completed image fully on screen. Remember, it's the F key that opens up Photoshop screen to be able to view an image like this, although I have put a very thin white line just around the edge just to present my image finally for your viewing. When we see the original unmanipulated image, if we needed evidence that image editing is just a series of small steps, each one of them may be insignificant on their own, but when we add 10 or a dozen stages together, that's when we get the wow value. So there we have a simple subject, terrible conditions, but a good image.